Humor, haunts, and homicide.
Hey, bitch!
Welcome to the first episode of our new podcast, Humor, Haunts, and Homicide. I am your co-host, Renee Biggs.
And I'm your co-host, Josh Compton. Yeah. I just wanted to start this whole journey off and start by explaining who we are, why we love this genre, and what our passion was behind it. For me, I started off as a teenager really loving true crime, watching unsolved mysteries with my family, my siblings, and really getting into Scream. And, you know, in fact, as little kids, when we had 6 kids growing up, we actually made a home video and we called it Stalker. And we did it in the upstairs rendition. We had a new piece of our house being built because we had so many kids. And it was a blended family. So we ended up moving into a new home all at once.
A little Brady Bunch.
Little Brady Bunch, if you will. And we, it wasn't finished yet, the whole remodeling of the upstairs. And we did it up there, like in a creepy attic scene.
That's cute.
Yeah. So that was where it all started for me. But, you know, I've had some haunting experiences in my life that has really drawn me to the realm of ghosts and the dead and that whole realm of what's next. So, you know, I wanted to kind of mix my love for Renee and our friendship and relationship mixed with all these things that keep me interested in this genre and kind of share some creepy stories with all of you.
Yeah, we kind of we bond a lot over our love for true crime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, for me, I'm kind of the same. I've really always been into the genre. Watching Forensic Files back when it started. I mean, honestly, weirdly enough, true crime is kind of like my comfort.
Yeah.
It's just whatever. I'm weird, you know, and I own it. But yeah, so we've just super been into podcasts like the last couple of years. I mean, I really only listen to true crime podcasts at this point.
Yeah.
And that's what I watch, and that's, I don't know, it's just what I'm interested in, and we just decided to give it a try. Like, let's go for it.
Let's do it.
Yeah, we'll see how you guys like it.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to finally do this. We've talked about it for like, 3 years?
Probably about that. And I don't know, just the time seemed right now. And
yeah, I'm in this mantra, for me at least, like New Year, 2024, starting off right, really getting into the groove and really, you know, I wanted to do something that I've always talked about, but I've never had the guts to do, and it made me uncomfortable and work hard, and I've really been excited for this.
Well, I mean, my mantra is still New Year, same bitch, but I am definitely, you know, excited about about adding this to my repertoire.
Absolutely. You know, we're not changing the old, we're just improving some new. You know?
Maybe a little bit also like about our relationship.
Yeah.
Not only are we best friends, but we're actually legitimately family.
We are.
Josh is married to my husband's brother, and I actually did marry them.
That's true.
It was a cute little Halloween wedding.
That's true.
Where everybody got to dress up, and yeah, it was super awesome.
You were Winifred Sanderson?
I was Winifred Sanderson, otherwise known as Renifred Sanderbiggs.
And she did a great job. Another thing that you should know is that we're very competitive with each other, so we do a lot of gaming, and we do a lot of party nights where we have like a little foursome group, like Renee and her husband and my husband, and we just get together and we basically talk a bunch of shit.
And we kick each other's asses.
Yeah,
so, you know.
And we have a lot of time doing it, and you know, it's not a good night unless there are kids here that we're threatening death in the background, you know? So, and again, it all kind of ties back into the horror genre, my haunted wedding, and you know, everything just kind of mixes. It just made it feel right that this is the right time to do this.
So, yeah. Without further ado, I think that you might have a very fun little haunting story for us.
I do.
Today, and let's get into it.
Yeah, let's dive right in. So I am bringing you a story that I've actually had a recent experience with, and you know, it kind of also drew some passion behind wanting to start this podcast as well. I stayed with my husband the week before Christmas this year in Savannah, Georgia, and some of you may or may not know that that town and city is one of the most haunted in almost the world.
Yeah,
Definitely
I still
the
haven't
country.
been. I still haven't been.
Oh my God, you have to go.
Yeah,
You have to go.
Yeah.
And I'll say that when you immediately get there, you feel like the history. It's very much picturesque. It's very rustic and Victorian, and you almost feel creepy.
I love that.
You just feel the creep, and you have to walk everywhere, so you literally have to experience the city for what it is, and so. When we got there, I made sure that I wanted to experience everything haunted. It was kind of a bucket list thing for me. Just really go and do the whole tour of the town, get the whole city vibes, have a tour guide really show me what it's all about, and a lot of the history behind a lot of the sites that we visited. And I wanted to make sure that I stayed in somewhere that was extremely haunted and known for notoriety, and I stayed at the Marshall House.
Nice.
So for those of you that don't know, the Marshall House is on Broughton Street in downtown Savannah, and it is right in the heart of all that is beautiful. And it's busy, and it's just slap dab in the middle of downtown. So the story I'm going to tell you is extremely historically written, so I'm going to start with some facts, and then I'm going to kind of dive into why it's haunted and what the stories people have experienced. So the story really starts with a woman named Mary Marshall. The hotel was built in 1851. It was opened in 1852 in Savannah, and it is the oldest known hotel in Savannah to this day. And Mary Magdalene Marshall was the prominent businesswoman born September 7th, 1783. She passed away January 26th in 1877.
Old.
I know, she was super old. But she lived a good life, it sounds like, because Mary had a reputation of being a successful businesswoman. She was an active socialite in Savannah's community, and even up until her death at 93.
Wow.
So she had a lot of respect.
Good for her.
Yeah, she lived a good life, and her reputation preceded her to this day. So at this time, Savannah was booming, doubling in population and size due to the railroad boom of the 1840s and 50s. So Mary inherited the land from her father's death in 1795. Her father's name was Gabriel Lever, and he was a French cabinet maker as an occupation. Mary originally opened the hotel on this land that she inherited, not realizing the dark history that would loom and later surround the hotel. The hotel opened on Broughton Street, like I mentioned, in the premier shopping district in Savannah, and it had gone through the full renovation for almost 2 years before it was reopened to the public in 1859. It operated as a hotel in booming Savannah between 1851 and 1861. Then, between the years of 1864 and 1865, the hotel was occupied by Union troops led by General William Tecumseh Sherman. The building was used as a Union hospital to house the wounded soldiers until the end of the Civil War. And then in 1867, a volunteer fire department named the Marshall Hose Company, see what they did there? Marshall Hose Company, was established to protect the Marshall House and other prominent properties in town. So by 1880, an adjoining property to the hotel was annexed. That way they added space to the Marshall House, which actually increased the capacity and space by 1/3. Then the hotel continued as business as usual until 1895, when it closed for 4 years. The hotel reopens in 1899 under the same name, the Marshall House, and gets another enhancement. The hotel has then installed with electrical lighting, hot and cold baths, visual enhancements on every floor, and this is to entice the guests to stay there. The hotel operated under the Marshall House name until around 1910. Then around 1910 through about 1920, a businesswoman named Minnie Geiger bought the hotel and it operated under the name Geiger Hotel until 1933. Then in 1933, Herbert W. Gilbert, a prominent hotel and real estate mogul from Jacksonville, Florida, leased the building and changed the name to the Gilbert Hotel. Then in 1941, Herbert sold the property and the hotel closed again. Between the years 1941 and 1946, the hotel was reopened again under the name the Marshall House. But this time, the hotel had operated under a complete renovation, which the hotel now has 66 rooms, 1 suite, 1 apartment, and 6 storage rooms.
That's a lot of changes.
A ton.
In like a short amount of time.
A ton. And, you know, it was cool back then because they had to go through a whole process. You couldn't just like buy a building and tear down a wall. Like you had to have it annexed. You had to go through the county. It was like a whole deal. Wasn't as easy as it could probably be today. So, but sadly, the hotel took another dark turn in 1957. The 106-year-old hotel closed yet again. This time the owner was not able to make those accommodations to keep the building up to code with fire and structural compliance, and then they were forced to cease operations. After the hotel closed, the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th floor were then all but abandoned, and then the ground floor was maintained for different shopkeepers and stores to keep open until about 1998.
Like 40 years.
Yeah,
Wow.
so think about that, like this huge building and all this history, and even the dark history.
And it's just like locked up
Locked up.
I mean, aside from the ground floor, but.
Now, I don't know necessarily if it was because of the fear, you know, from everything that had happened, which we'll get into in a minute.
Yeah.
Or if it was just due to, you know, people not having the right kind of business space for it, or the money, because it's really expensive downtown also to live in Savannah. I've realized, you know, not that I maybe looked into it because I loved it so much, but, you know, anywho. So then, luckily in 1998, the building was bought by a new owner and renovations started taking place. So by this time in 1999, when that came around, the hotel was fully restored, renovated, and then reopened to the public once more, where it operates as Savannah's oldest operating hotel. So now, what's really cool, and when you walk into the hotel, there is this big, huge portrait, and you can see immediately that it's historic, of Mary Marshall, the original owner, hanging behind the guest desk. And then it was required by Jim Williams. I guess he probably goes by James, right?
I mean, that's probably his.
That's probably still
That's probably
correct.
his government name.
Yeah. He was a central figure in John Bernst's novel, which is non-fictional. You may have even heard of it, Midnight in the Garden of Good and Evil. Yeah. So they put this there, that way Mary could still greet her guest, even in death, upon every entry when they walk in, which I thought was cool and creepy, all in one little bundle there. So while the hotel had been renovated several times over the course of history, much of the current structure is still original. The pressed brick on the exterior, the iron wordings on the front of the hotel, the wooden floor, the staircases, the fireplaces, and the doors to each room are among a few of those items. Now, when you walk down the corridors in the hallway, there to the right side of almost like every, 8 feet, there's fireplaces that are not being used and they're not active today.
Right.
But if we think about it, like back then they don't have electricity.
Yeah. So they would need that.
Yeah. So
in the winter.
Imagine
That's cool.
heating your whole entire huge hotel with a ton of fireplaces. I mean, can you imagine the, amount of liability if you don't do that right? So, now that you understand the history of this hotel and where it stands today, let me tell you about why this hotel is notoriously haunted. All right. So during its run as a hospital during the Civil War, the hotel would conduct their amputations on the 4th floor. The hospital staff did this because they thought that the town patrons would hear less of the screams from downtown if the surgeries were done higher up and away from the streets.
Nice.
While in that period, as we probably know, there is no anesthesia to give your patients during operations. And all you would really do to help them with their pain is give them some vodka, give them a tourniquet, hoping to numb this pain, and get to slacking with that tourniquet.
No big deal.
No big deal. Whack, whack. So another creepy fact is that the hotel operated during 2 yellow fever outbreaks during these years between 1854 and 1876. Now, there's about 1,000, maybe even several thousands that are believed to have died in that hospital between this time. There's not really any historical documents that prove that.
Yeah.
But, just based on everything that happened in the Civil War and the deaths, and, I can only imagine. So when the hotel was restored in the 1990s, workers were replacing damaged floorboards on the ground level when they found human remains. The area soon became a crime scene because it was later determined that the basement was where the hospital had discarded amputated body parts and the limbs of wounded Civil War soldiers. So, even though most of the haunted activity is reported on the 4th floor, the guests have reported that hauntings on the ground floor still happen.
They're probably looking for their missing limbs.
Right.
Which,
We'll get to that in a second. Okay. I'm glad you read my mind. One infamous story about a mother and son who stayed at the hotel states that the mother was in the hotel stepping away to get ice. The son was in the room. She returned just a few minutes later, and she heard her son talking through the other side of the door. And it sounded like he was playing some kind of game by herself, so she hurried up, opened the door, and she heard her son yell, "Ouch, you bit me." And then she says, "Hey, like, who are you talking to?" And the son replies, "The boy that bit me." And the mother says, "What boy?" And the son replies, "The boy I was just playing with in the bathroom." And then the mother scurried over to the bathroom, and no one was there, of course. And as scary as this is, the child received a bite-sized mark, which is normally reported as a normal occurrence at the Marshall House.
It's going to be a no for me, Dawn.
Yeah.
Right there, yeah.
So now, guests have also reported hearing a distinct sound of an old-fashioned typewriter coming from the former room of author Joel Chandler Harris, who is best known for his collection of Uncle Remus stories. It is the spirit of Joel Chandler Harris still typing away, intent on creating another tale about Uncle Remus. Others tell a story of a dapper gentleman reading a book by a window, a lady in white flowing through the hallways, and another ghostly woman who haunt the ladies' restroom. And on occasion, she'll stalk the halls as well. Let's just hope it's a ghost and not some Chuck Berry copycat with a serious fetish problem. Now, another tale includes guests who have also reported seeing a Civil War soldier walking vacantly through the hotel, pleading guests to help find his amputated hand and to help him find a doctor.
There it is.
Mm-hmm. Some guests have complained about a rotting smell coming from the 4th floor. Rooms 414 and 420 have been reported as the rooms with the highest ghostly activity. Now, it's believed that most of the amputations happened up there, and when I stayed there, we were lucky enough to stay in room 416, which shares a wall with room 414. Now, other spooky occurrences that have happened at this hotel include feeling a high sense of anxiety, cold blast while sleeping, blankets and sheets being moved off of them while sleeping. Guests have also heard children's voices and them running through the halls, bouncing balls at all hours of the night.
Awesome.
How do you feel about that?
I don't love that. I don't love the high anxiety because I already have plenty of that.
Mm-hmm. Well, let me add some more for you, because in addition to these spooky stories, guests have also included seeing faucets turning themselves on, lights flickering off and on. Now, some of the freaky experiences that happened to us, Dylan and I heard initially when we first got there, children running through the hallways. And Dylan didn't want to believe it. He thought it was just a child. Yeah. I initially thought this is a ghost because I've heard about these stories. And he had not. So he's kind of skeptical. I'm more open to the idea of it.
Right.
So I was just like, okay, whatever. Well, then I looked down when that happened initially, and I didn't see any shadow. So I was like, oh, in the back of my mind, that's a ghost, but I let it be, so I didn't freak him out. And then another experience was we went to bed the next night, and about 1 a.m., I woke up to go to the bathroom. Out of nowhere, I hear the same noise again. This time I was brave enough to immediately open that door because I was standing...
Kids play at 1 a.m.
Yeah, all the time. It's not a problem. So I opened the door, and there was, of course, nothing there, and I was immediately freaked out, and I couldn't go to bed the rest of the night. So absolutely, there is something that I experienced that was haunted in that hotel. Another thing that happened was we were brave enough to get the courage to kind of roam the lobby at 1 a.m., which, by the way, was beautiful because nobody was there and you got to really soak it all in by yourself. But you just felt creepy. You felt like there was something there lingering. And that's the part.
There was.
You're like, yeah, I was there. Don't worry about it. Now, another thing that happened was Dylan experienced a child-sized bite that people have actually witnessed as a normal reoccurring thing there. And he showed me the bite, and initially I thought that it was something that had bit him that was, of ghostly nature. Mm-hmm. He thought it was a bug bite, and it lasted for, 3 weeks? You saw it.
It was. You guys came back from vacation, and I absolutely saw it. It was very weird. And, I will say I initially thought it was a bug bite, too, but that shit was on there for way too long. So, And
there's kind of, still a little scar there now. It's not, super prominent, but you can see it. Mark of the beast.
Oh, yeah.
But I would say that if you're looking for something that is going to scare you and make you feel like you are in a castle of royalty in a Victorian time, you want to go to the Marshall House.
I would love to go there.
No, you were telling me you had a story that you were going to wait for this podcast, and I'm really excited to hear what this might be about.
Yeah, so it's not like my actual experience, but when my daughter was about 7, she went to Savannah on vacation with her dad, and they did a ghost tour. She was like kind of freaked out, but she's like me. She's into, like the weird things, and so she was excited to go. And she came back and told me about a story about the tour guide had told them that, I don't know if this is the same hotel, but I know there's like a lot of, everything is haunted over there. But there was a specific hotel that people would stay in, and women would wake up in the morning and their hair would be braided. I guess there were like these little girl, spirits or whatever. And she looks at me and was like, Mommy, I don't want ghost girls to braid my hair.
Now, how old is Audrey now, so everyone understands?
She's almost 13 now. Okay. So this was like, I guess like 6 years ago now or something like that. But anyway, I thought it was a funny story. Could you imagine?
No.
Like waking up and, I mean, not that you have hair that could be braided, but you know what I'm saying.
I do.
Just imagine. It's, wow.
So what was your initial reaction to that?
I mean, to be honest, there was like that part of me that I kind of want to go there and have little ghost girls braid my hair. I'm not going to lie.
Like a French braid or like pigtails?
I'm not really sure how I don't know how they do that. I don't know how intricate they can be. How skilled are they?
Well, they probably have a lot of practice because they've had eternity to do it.
Really.
You know what I mean? So stay tuned for the cosmetologist ghost that's going to French braid Renee's hair.
Oh, awesome story. I loved it.
Thank you so much. Appreciate that.
All right. Well, it's my turn now.
Okay. You're take the wheel.
Renee, take the wheel. Okay. I'm going to tell you today about this crazy fucking bitch named Katherine Knight. So
more, please.
Yeah, buckle up.
Okay, buckle.
Let me just get right into it.
Okay.
Katherine Knight was born on October 24th, 1955 in Tenterfield, New South Wales, Australia.
Oh, man.
Yeah, we're going down under.
All right.
Her parents were Ken Knight and Barbara Rohan. To say that her childhood was terrible is an understatement.
Oh.
Her father was an alcoholic who was extremely violent to her mother. He would rape Barbara up to 10 times a day right in front of all of the children.
Holy disgusting shit.
Yeah. Barbara had a habit of discussing her intimate sex details with her children, mostly her daughters, and was very vocal about her hatred for sex and men. So, ironically...
With her kids?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, totally normal.
Yeah. Katherine claims that she was sexually abused by multiple members of her family up until the age of 11. Which was confirmed by several other family members. She does claim it was never her father, but I am calling bullshit on that.
So she never told who it was, per what you read?
I never actually saw like who it was, but it seems to be kind of substantiated. So like basically her childhood just kept getting worse and worse. I mean, it was really bad. She was known as a pretty pleasant child for the most part, but she would get abnormally mad with like tiny little occurrences. So like for instance, she would like assaulted a boy with a weapon at school, and she was actually once injured by a teacher who was found to have acted in self-defense.
Oh.
So she would go from like being like super cool to like these like crazy outbursts, but like to like the crazy.
Whoa.
Yeah. She was abnormally interested in dead animals. That's an interesting little thing about her.
That's always how it starts.
It does. But yeah. But when she was not in her rages, she actually won good awards for her good behavior in school.
Oh.
So she was like all over the place. Okay. Apparently, though, she was not a great student because when she left school at age 15, she had no idea how to read or write.
Oh. Right.
She ended up getting a job in a clothing company as a cutter, but then about a year later, she left and got her dream job at the local abattoir, which is like the That's like a butcher place where they like butcher pigs and stuff.
Okay.
So she was quickly promoted to boning and was given her own set of butcher knives, which she cherished and started hanging them over her bed. Like, she would carry these bitches everywhere, and like she was like obsessed with her knives.
Okay, I'm instantly scared. Okay, keep going.
She did this so that they could always be handy if she ever needed to use them in their bedroom. That's normal. In 1973, Katherine met David Kellett at work, and they began dating. She was very dominating and would jump in if David got into bar fights. Like, imagine your girl, like, happen to protect you, They got married in 1974 at her request. And they showed up to the wedding ceremony on her motorcycle with David intoxicated on the back.
King Catherine to the rescue.
At the wedding, Barbara went up to David. Barbara, who is, I'm reminding you, was Catherine's mother, went up to David and said the following quote. You better watch this one or she'll fucking kill you. Stir her up the wrong way or do the wrong thing and you're fucked. Don't ever think of playing up on her. She will fucking kill you.
Open book test.
So, She attempted to strangle David on their wedding night because he only had sex with her 3 times that night.
Oh.
And he passed out after 3 times, and that was unacceptable. Apparently, her mother had let her know that her and her father had consummated the marriage 5 times on their wedding night. So for her, 3 times was like a failure. So she, in turn, decided to try to strangle her brand new husband.
I see. Okay.
So, yeah.
Normal.
The marriage was violent as a whole, seemingly just on Catherine's part. One time, David went to a darts competition and made the finals. Catherine, who was heavily pregnant at the time, was so mad that he was getting home late, even though there was a good reason. She burned all of his clothes and shoes and hit him over the head with a frying pan when he returned, which badly fractured his skull. Somehow, she charmed him into dropping all charges. Which I'm not really sure. Like, I don't know what this
Magic
woman was.
snatch or what?
I don't know what she was doing. But yeah. Their first child, Melissa, was born in May of 1976. Shortly after this, David moved to Queensland and left her for another woman.
Oh, okay.
She did not take this well. And I know that's shocking, but she was seen pushing Melissa in the stroller, shaking it back side to side violently. They sent her to a hospital and she was diagnosed with postpartum depression, which I'm going to go on a limb and say that there was a lot more going on.
Yeah, I was going to guess there's maybe a few more things happening behind the scenes.
When she was released a few weeks later, she promptly took 2-month-old Melissa to some train tracks and laid her on them and left her there. Thankfully, a man discovered Melissa minutes before the train was due to pass. The police did arrest her, but she was able to just sign herself out the next day. Like, I'm not really sure what was going on in Australia in the 70s where you can put your baby on a train track and then just, like, sign yourself out of jail the next day, but...
And I'm interested to know, like, did she have a record afterwards? Or was she, like, completely let go of the crime itself?
I'm not really sure, but a few days later... So, mind you, she's good enough to sign herself out of jail. But a few days later, she slashed a woman in the face with one of her knives and demanded that she drive her to Queensland to find David.
Oh.
Thankfully, the woman was able to escape when they stopped at a service station, but not before Katherine took a little boy hostage and threatened him with a knife. This really took me out here. The police were able to disarm her using brooms, which... Just picture that. And then they ended up taking her to Morisset Psychiatric Hospital.
Which, I'm sure there's more to that.
While there, she actually informed the nurses that her original plan was to kill the mechanic at the service station because he had repaired David's car, which allowed him to leave her and escape to Queensland. And then she was going to kill both David and his mother.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Uh-huh.
Now... When David was notified of this, he left his new girlfriend and went back to Aberdeen with his mother to support Katherine. What?
Okay.
Like, hi, this woman's was gonna kill you. Let me go back to her. I don't know. Maybe it was fear. I don't know. But wow.
Wow.
Somehow she was released on August 9th, 1976. And went back to live with David and his mother, where she was able to obtain a job at the Dinmore Meat Works. In March of 1980, they had another daughter named Natasha. Their relationship continued to deteriorate, and Katherine ended up leaving David in 1984. I'm shocked that she's the one who left him, and that the relationship actually lasted that long. Anyway.
It sounds like she should have sliced and diced a little sooner.
I mean.
But okay.
So in 1986, she met David Saunders. So now we're on David number 2. He moved in with her and her 2 daughters just a few months later, but he actually kept his apartment. Katherine would often get upset with him and kick him out, so he would just go back to his apartment. But then she would follow him and beg him to return, and he would. So this would happen over and over, and he would leave, and then she would get him to come back, because she's got some kind of witchy powers. I don't understand it. She's crazy, but whatever. In May of 1987, she slit the throat of his 2-month-old dingo puppy just to show him what she would do to him if he ever had an affair. Then knocked him out with a frying pan. I think she was a cartoon character.
What?
Yeah, so basically he didn't do anything. She just did this to just be like, hey, this is what's going to happen if you fuck with me, pretty much. So, yeah. In June of 1988, she gave birth to their daughter, Sarah. This woman should not be having, she's fertile, but she should not be having kids.
Whoa.
They purchased a house together, and Katherine decorated it in animal hides, skulls, rusty traps, machetes, old boots, and of course, those prize knives hanging right over their bed. How disconcerting must that be? To be like, oh, hey, here's my house. And when I'm sleeping, this crazy woman has knives.
I'm going to assume she's not hosting many family parties.
Probably not. Probably not. So, after an argument where Katherine hit Saunders in the face with an iron and stabbed him in the stomach with a pair of scissors, he finally had enough and went into hiding.
Now I feel this is too much. This is it.
Yeah, Despite Katherine's threats, no one admitted to knowing where he was. Several months later, he did try to come back to see his daughter, but had discovered that Katherine had claimed that she was afraid of him and had obtained a restraining order on him. So again, the justice system over there was great.
Wow.
In 1990, Katherine got pregnant by a man named John Chillingworth and gave birth to a son, Eric. They stayed together for 3 years until she left him for a man that she had been having a long-term affair with, John Price. That's really, I just wanted to put that in there just because she did have another child, number 4, I think we're at this point. So John Pricey Price was the father of 3 children, 2 of whom lived with him. Even though he was well aware of her violent reputation, he allowed Katherine to move into his home in 1995. The magic snatches. They would have violent arguments, but nothing ever enough for Price to leave. In 1998, they had a big fight over his refusal to marry her. She videotaped items that he had taken from his job, and I guess they were just little expired things, weren't a big deal, but
would still bring company policy.
Yes.
Yeah.
She sent the tape to his company, and he ended up getting fired from this job that he had held for 17 years.
Oh my God.
He was understandably really upset about that and kicked her out that day. But lo and behold, somehow, a few months later, she convinced him to take her back. But he actually didn't allow her to move back in with him, but they were a couple again.
What?
Their relationship continued to be incredibly volatile, with her assaulting him frequently. And this man is just he was supposedly the nicest man ever, too. So I just don't really...
Which is, of course, why she chose him, because it seems to me she's got a control thing.
Oh, 100%.
So she needed to be able to, dominate the situation.
So in February of 2000, Katherine stabbed John in the chest. He finally had enough, finally, after that. On February 29th, he stopped by the court on the way to work to obtain a restraining order against her to protect he and his children.
Okay, let's pause for a minute. So he gets stabbed in the chest. He somehow makes it through, and he just waltzes over to the courthouse.
Yeah, I don't think it was It must have just been a flesh wound.
Okay.
You know.
All right.
When he got to work that day, he told all of his coworkers that if he did not show up to work the following day, it was because Katherine had killed him. Yeah. They pleaded with him not to go home, but he was worried that she would hurt his children if he didn't. So when he arrived home, no one was there. Katherine had sent the children to stay at a friend's house, but she also wasn't there, so he was just like, cool, okay. Mm-hmm. And he spent the night hanging out with a neighbor and decided to go to bed around 11. Katherine showed up later that night, watched some TV, took a shower. Apparently she woke him up. They had sex. Yeah. Which I'm like, I thought you just got a restraining order on this one.
Yeah.
I'm not understanding this logic, but then he went back to sleep. The next morning, when John did not show up for work, his coworkers were understandably very concerned. One of them was sent to check on him. And when he noticed blood on the front door, he immediately notified the police. They broke down the back door and found Katherine comatose from taking a large number of pills. She had stabbed Price while he was sleeping with a butcher's knife, one of her,
normal
prized possessions.
Yeah.
According to the blood evidence, it did not kill him right away, which is terrible. He had woken up and attempted to flee the house with Katherine chasing after him. He was able to make it all the way to the front door and outside, but Katherine dragged him back inside. And he ended up dying there by bleeding out. His autopsy revealed that he had been stabbed 37 times.
What?
Wounds were both to the back and the front of his body.
How much rage do you have in you to stab someone 37 times and not have it affect you?
Yeah. Well, this one right here might get you here. Oh. Several hours after he was dead, Katherine skinned him completely, because she was skilled, like an animal, and hung his skin from a doorway.
Okay, listeners, I know you can't see my mouth, but I think, Renee, you can attest, it's to the floor.
It is. I'm not done.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
She then decapitated him and decided to cook up parts of his body with baked potato, pumpkin, zucchini, cabbage, yellow squash, and gravy. She then set 2 settings at the table with little notes next to each plate, when the notes were basically addressed to his children. So this bitch was preparing to serve him to his own children. A 3rd setting was thrown into the back lawn for an unknown reason. Some people speculate that maybe she had attempted to eat him and couldn't, or that maybe other people think that it was some kind of she was throwing him to the dogs, or I don't know. But his head was found in a pot with vegetables. She then arranged his body, in all posed, right. And then took a shitload of pills and she tried to kill herself, but she didn't. So Now this bitch claims to not remember the murder and was trying to plead guilty to only manslaughter, but they rejected that because you've been crazy your whole life and now you're going to be.
It doesn't work every time, people. No. It doesn't work.
Yeah. She did eventually agree to plead guilty to murder, even though she maintained her innocence. So she was like, all right, I guess I'll do it. But she still says whatever. At her sentencing hearing, her lawyers attempted to have her excused to avoid hearing some of the facts. The audacity, it was too hard for her to have to hear the facts of what she did.
Oh my
to her
gosh.
Her husband, essentially. It was her common law, close enough. Mm-hmm. Thankfully, they refused that. But when some of the details were read, she became hysterical and they had to sedate her. So this bitch is just a little actress and I hate her. So thankfully, on November 8th, 2001, Katherine Knight became the very first woman in Australian history to be sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. She did try to appeal her sentence, stating that it was too severe of a sentence.
Yep.
But that was rejected. So
I think your person Stu says differently.
Yeah. So that was the crazy story of Australia's first sentenced to life without parole, crazy badass bitch, Katherine Knight.
It makes me want to date her.
She was so magnetic and what a great personality.
Wow. Wow. Well, I'm one, mind blown, and two, I have to give you a round of applause. That was fantastic. That was fantastic. Yes. I don't know what I was expecting, but that was not it. That was definitely not.
Well, you usually don't expect people to murder their husband and try to feed them to his children. That's not really in the norm. So yeah.
And then the getting away with it all those times thing, and then all the times they went back, and oh my god,
it's crazy.
Crazy. Wow, great job. Today's show notes for the Marshall House story include marshallhouse.com, Wikipedia's article for the Marshall House, and GhostCityTours.com's article for the Marshall House.
And then my sources for Katherine Knight, I got from the Morbid podcast, episode 18, which you should really listen to them. They're good. And Murderpedia, which if you guys have not delved into Murderpedia, you really should, because it's like Wikipedia, but obviously for true crime. It's awesome.
I've never heard of it. I'm going to have to.
Yeah, you're going to need to delve in. Yeah. And and then I will also have the exact links for that in the show notes.
Thank you very much, guys. But you know what? Don't worry. We're going to return because
mystery doesn't sleep.
And neither do we.
Bye, bitch! Humor, haunts, and homicide.